Hey y'all, believe it or not, Halo CE is not only my most played Halo game, but also my favorite. In fact, besides Half-Life and Black Mesa, this is probably the most familiar I've ever been with the original version of a game before playing its remake. Campaign Evolved had a lot to live up to, not only in my eyes, but for 343 as well, and it succeeded, but only for one of us. I first played Halo CE when I was about 8 or 9, but for years I found it, and the franchise as a whole, too slow paced. It wasn't until I replayed CE on Heroic with my boyfriend that the game finally clicked for me. On PC via the Master Chief Collection, Combat Evolved is just a fantastic game with an amazing story, great art direction, and just extremely fun and fluid combat. So when Campaign Evolved got revealed in October of 2025, I was confused. Why did this game need a remake when it not only already has gotten a remaster, but also is readily available through MCC? Well, the obvious answer is that remakes are cheaper and easier to make than new games, as well as likely selling well too due to people's love for CE. I do think, however, that there is another reason. 343, now Halo Studios, has had a rough time leading the Halo franchise. Their latest game, Infinite, suffered from development issues, which hurt the campaign, as well as engine issues, which hurt the live service aspect. Campaign Evolved is clearly 343 trying to learn from this, returning to their roots by remaking their first Halo game, Halo Anniversary, on a brand new engine. Campaign Evolved is meant to be a new beginning for the franchise, not just for fans, but for 343 themselves, learning from their mistakes from previous entries and giving them a path forward into the future. After playing Campaign Evolved, I can say that while it is a great remake of the original game, I don't think it does a good job at laying a foundation for the future. In this video, I'll explain why by looking at the game's presentation, gameplay, and its bonus campaign. Because I'm primarily reviewing Campaign Evolved as a remake, I won't focus heavily on the story. I will need to vaguely reference parts of the second half, but I'll try my best to avoid specific details. So I think you can watch this video before playing the game. Campaign Evolved looks visually fantastic. A big criticism people had with Halo Anniversary was that it ruined CE's original art style, specifically in missions like 343 Guilty Spark, where it took away from the horror-esque atmosphere. When Campaign Evolved was first revealed with the Silent Cartographer mission, I was worried that something even worse would happen. The game would look soulless. On first impressions, it seemed like 343 was overcorrecting from the criticism from Anniversary, and was essentially just taking the CE assets one for one and making them look better. I really felt like what they showed from the Silent Cartographer in the reveal looked genuinely like an AI's idea of what a CE remake would look like, as every single thing looked exactly the same from CE's version of the mission, just with better textures, lighting, and details like water physics and tire tracks in the sand. While it did look visually impressive, the visuals gave off a certain uncanny valley effect, mixed with the 25-year-old level design, which is probably why I felt it looked like the soulless AI. Upon actually playing Campaign Evolved, however, I can thankfully say that all of my fears were not true whatsoever. Campaign Evolved does a fantastic job at not only looking great, but mostly keeping the original intent of CE's art direction. One of my favorite things about most older games, but CE especially, was how it kinda has an almost liminal space sort of vibe to it. I absolutely love the backrooms and liminal spaces, and so that atmosphere is one of my favorite things about it. I really think Campaign Evolved does a great job at staying true to that, with the better textures actually adding to it. Going through the old empty Forerunner structures especially, the sleek and shiny metal surfaces really add to the uneasiness of it all, especially with how dark and empty these structures can be. It all does a pretty decent job at recapturing the vibe of the original game. 343 knew exactly what to change here, but also what to keep the same. Most missions in the first half of the game are essentially identical, with minor changes at most. I really want to highlight 343 Guilty Spark specifically, which is actually mostly elevated by the improved lighting and sound design. I was actually kind of scared walking through this level now, as it's just so much darker than it ever was before. The sense of scale added at the end of the level especially is great, with the darkness just enveloping everything around you as you hold out in the one spot of light. I don't think the graphics are perfect by any means, however. Detail is added in places where it wasn't before, and sometimes it works. When stepping out on the Halo ring for the first time, it just felt huge, much bigger than it ever did before. The added details such as the trees, foliage, and especially the trail of dirt in front of the escape pod all help make the environment feel bigger, because it helps hide the fact of how small it really is. I think this has the opposite effect in some of the actual bigger levels though, like Attack on the Control Room. In the original game, Attack on the Control Room was a big, almost completely empty canyon that really made you feel so small and alone, even if you were technically not. While Campaign Evolved does do a decent job at retaining this feeling, I just feel like the better graphics help highlight how small the canyon actually is. It is a small issue, but shows how every change this remake makes is a trade-off, and is almost never a completely good or bad thing. Nowhere is this more apparent than Campaign Evolved's approach to telling CE's story. The story here is almost identical, with maybe 90% of the dialogue being exactly the same. The biggest change, however, is in its approach to cutscenes. In the original CE, cutscenes were usually pretty short and in real time, which made sense for the time as storytelling in gaming was still kinda being figured out. Campaign Evolved, however, takes a completely new and modern approach, with longer, pre-rendered cinematic cutscenes. And while I do typically love cinematic cutscenes, I do have some things with them here that I am hesitant about. First off, I do think some of these cutscenes are either unnecessary or just a bit too long. The opening, for example, is like twice the length of the original opening, and nothing of value is really added in my opinion. It adds a Star Wars-like fight in space, along with additional screen time devoted to Johnson and his soldiers fighting the invading Covenant. This is a recurring theme where cutscenes are largely used to make the game feel more grand and action-packed than it actually is. Even a simple cutscene like the one in Silent Cartographer where Chief kicks a rock down the pit is heavily extended. These extra scenes kind of feel out of place, especially when compared to the original. However, I think it works mostly pretty well for this version of the game. The voice acting has also been almost entirely redone, with characters like Chief, Cortana, and Keyes all re-recording their lines. I've seen a lot of people hating on these newly re-recorded lines, but similar to the redone cutscenes, I actually think that they mostly work for this version of the game. Sure, Cortana and Chief do sound much older, but that's not typically something you're gonna notice unless you've played the original. I do think, however, that Keyes is a bit of a misstep, where he just kinda sounds off to me. He just doesn't sound nearly as expressive or commanding as he did in the original in my opinion, which is a bit of a step down. There are also a few story changes here. Elites now speak English like they do in the rest of the series, and the game includes a post credit scene that directly connects it to Halo 2. The biggest change, however, happens right at the start of the game with Keys. In their first interaction, Keys gives Chief a pistol that he tells Chief to give to Miranda. This is not only a great link to Halo 2, but also could be a great way to develop the connection between Chief and Keys. Unfortunately, this idea just goes underutilized. Chief and Keys only interact twice more after this face to face, and because this game is trying to be so faithful to the original, it just never really goes anywhere with this plot point. I love when remakes add little things like this, and I wish Campaign Evolved could have gone even further. Presentation-wise, Campaign Evolved is mostly fantastic. It does a great job at keeping the original intent behind CE's art direction while also bringing its storytelling to modern standards. I don't think it's perfect, but at the end of the day, this remake is its own thing, and it works wonders in that regard. A modern remake of CE should have better graphics and storytelling, and Campaign Evolved does. And yet, that's not nearly the best thing about this remake. Campaign Evolved's improved gameplay is what makes this remake so great in my opinion. CE had great gameplay with the best gunplay in any Bungie Halo game, with Reach coming in at a close second. It had one huge issue, however, that heavily impacted the game: the level design. The last 4 missions of the game all took place in the same places as levels in the first half of the game, some of which are literally almost the exact same level backwards. When Campaign Evolved was advertised as having faithful level design and as well as an extended gun pool, I got worried. Both of these things are technically true about Campaign Evolved. However, they are implemented much better than I had feared. Starting off with the expanded weapon pool, I was worried about that really ruining the tight flow of combat, where almost every single weapon had a use. That's one of the things I really love about the original, where there aren't very many guns, but each feels impactful. I don't want the battle rifle in CE because while it is a very good gun, it doesn't fit this game and it isn't fun to use in my opinion. Thankfully, however, most of these new guns are actually only available in the bonus campaign, with only maybe 4 or 5 being added to the main campaign. Everything that is added to the main campaign makes sense, as they are typically things that either don't change the sandbox much, or are weapons dropped by enemies in the original that you couldn't pick up, but can now. The Sentinels now drop the Sentinel Beam, which can be picked up, and you can finally use the Energy Sword from elites that drop it. The Beam Rifle and Fuel Rod Cannon have also been added, which are essentially just Covenant versions of guns in the original game. The only sort of out-of-place gun, in my opinion, is the SMG, which is kind of just a less powerful version of the AR, however, it works really well in levels like the library. What I liked the most about these additions is that while they do give the player more options, they aren't forced on you like the battle rifle is in Halo 2. In fact, I only used 2 of these new weapons, being the SMG and Energy Sword, and even then, it was rare. I was so glad that I was still able to play this game exactly like how I would with the original, using the same exact tactics I have learned over the years. Using the pistol in the Silent Cartographer, the shotgun in the library, the plasma pistol in the Maw, and the AR just the whole damn game. Beyond just the weapons that are included, the combat itself is also massively improved, mostly thanks to 3 big changes. Firstly, health kits are completely removed from this game. While I think the non-regenerating health worked in CE, I'm glad it's gone here. It made the game a lot more tense, but the series did move away from it for a reason. It being gone here removes a lot of time spent hiding in cover regenerated shields in order to not lose health. Secondly, the AR has been completely rebalanced, with less bullets and a tighter bullet spread. This makes it actually useful at longer ranges and a much better weapon to use for most of the game. Arguably, the biggest change, however, is the addition of sprinting. Sprinting is controversial in the Halo community, and while I don't mind sprint, I think it's controversial for good reason. Sprinting fundamentally changes the pacing of combat, as much of the combat is designed around Chief just walking at enemies and being a force of nature of sorts. I actually think the sprint really works here though. I actually hardly ever use the sprint, especially during combat, and really only used it during traversing the large environments. Because of that, I was actually really glad to have the option as it helped speed up the game's pacing and decrease boredom. All three of these changes, along with the added weapons, come together to create the best feeling and fastest paced Halo combat to date. I wish I would have been able to play this game when I was a kid, as it directly addresses my issue of the Halo games feeling a bit too slow paced. There is one thing here that kind of ruins the pacing and flow of combat though, which is the performance. This game overall runs pretty well, especially for an Unreal Engine game. However, at times the frame rate could dip to 40 to 50 FPS, making the combat feel slower and more choppy. This really does impact game feel, and I could imagine this could be a huge issue for some. The last big combat change was that some additional enemies were added. From what I can tell, only 2 new enemy types were added in the base campaign. First off, a new tank enemy was added in the second half of the game. This is a fantastic change, as this enemy only shows up a handful of times, unlike the hunter, and is treated as a sort of mini-boss. Every time I had to fight this enemy was great, and really added to the second half of the game for me. The other new enemy was the Jackal Sniper, which I, of course, think this game could do without. These guys aren't as annoying as they are in Halo 2, for example, as they only appear a handful of times, but I can only imagine how annoying they would be on harder difficulties. The improvements to combat are great and make this an incredibly fun game. And yet, I don't think that's where Campaign Evolved improves the most. I think the improvements it makes to level design are really what make this game. The repetitive level design killed the pacing of the back half of the original, yet Campaign Evolved really makes strides to fix that. The first half of the game is almost identical, with small changes in levels like Truth and Reconciliation, but it's the second half where the changes are really felt. The library is the most infamous level in all of Halo, with many people considering it to be the worst in the entire series. I felt the same for a long time, although I do think that as my love for the game grew, I did really start to like it more. I do think it needed to be changed though, and here in Campaign Evolved, it was. At first, it seems like the library is the same as you walk through the same exact halls over and over, with the one change being that you're going down instead of up. As you go further down, however, things start to get darker, more dangerous, and more infected. It's a really clever change, and one that I think makes this a great level. The last 3 levels after that don't have as big of changes, more so minor things. Campaign Evolved actually uses its increased fidelity to make changes, such as adding more signs of infection all throughout the levels. This really helps add to the environmental storytelling of the second half of the game and shows just how dire the situation has become on the ring. I do wish the game would go as far as they did with the library, but I think the faster pacing and better graphics do a good job at never making the game feel too repetitive, even in its worst levels. Overall, Halo Campaign Evolved is a great remake, all thanks to its fantastic revamped gameplay. It does a great job at modernizing the gameplay with faster paced combat, quality of life changes, and better level design. And yet, at the end of the day, it still feels like Halo CE. CE was my favorite Halo game, but I just think this game is slightly better. It's never gonna replace the original for me, as it'll always have a special place in my heart, yet I think this game is just better. Campaign Evolved is, at least for me, my new favorite Halo campaign. So, if I think this is the best Halo yet, why do I think this isn't a good path forward for the franchise? Well, it all has to do with Campaign Evolved's bonus missions. One of the things I wanted from a CE remake was a reason for me personally to play the game again. While I did end up getting that from the improved gameplay, originally I had wanted the campaign to be expanded with more levels in order to maybe break up the second half of the game. When I heard that 343 was just making a short bonus campaign instead, I was slightly disappointed but excited to see in what ways the franchise would be expanded in these short prequel missions. I played these 3 missions first, and that was unfortunately not the right call, for the simple reason that this bonus campaign is bad. It gave me such a terrible first impression that I actually ended up writing off the first few missions of the actual campaign. Pretty much every single thing about these bonus missions are just below average or bad, not just for Halo, but for the FPS genre as a whole. The story is the thing I was the most excited for, as I actually think the franchise has a lot of room to grow pre-Halo 1. In particular, this campaign was advertised as being about Chief and Johnson going on a mission together, which I actually think is a great idea. Sergeant Johnson isn't really developed much in the first Halo game, so I think the bonus campaign could have served as a way to get new players invested in his character even more before Halo 2 and 3. I just don't think this bonus campaign does a very good job though, not only at that goal, but even at being a good story at all. The bonus missions focus on Johnson and Chief infiltrating a Covenant ship in order to find the location of the Covenant's home, High Charity. This is a pretty decent setup for a story as it directly sets up Halo 2, yet this is a prequel to Halo 1. Why are we setting up the sequel to a game in its prequel? On top of that, Chief and Johnson already seem to know each other, and thus literally no development happens between them at all. This really could have made events in Halo 2 and 3 even more impactful than they already are now. The story here even fails at making Johnson a more likable character, as he is just written so poorly. Johnson is literally written more like an action hero instead of his typical commanding yet likable personality we've come to know. Why even write so much dialogue at all for Johnson if you don't have any idea how to write for him? Johnson is just constantly making terrible jokes the entire time, and even Chief himself joins in. It's just so out of character and frankly annoying. It's clear to me that Johnson was only included here because he's a fan favorite character and not the real main focus of the bonus campaign. What is the actual point of these missions is to introduce a new character, Lieutenant Williams, and shows how she changes after meeting Chief. Williams is an ODST who doesn't typically like Spartans within the Halo lore. So, upon first meeting Chief, Williams says that she doesn't believe in propaganda and PR campaigns and that respect is earned and all that jazz. This could be a really interesting idea, but of course, this story wastes it. The bonus campaign is a little over 2 hours long, spanning over 3 missions that last about 40 minutes each. Williams is not introduced until the second mission, meaning that her entire character arc takes place in less than an hour and a half. This results in this. On their first meeting, Williams says she doesn't like Chief. She then follows you around and makes little jabs about PR and stuff as you go. Then, at the end of the second mission, Johnson essentially says, "Hey Williams, Chief is actually a pretty cool guy." And she's like, "Oh, okay," and then starts liking you. It just happens so quickly that it has absolutely no impact at all. Because of her sudden change of heart, Williams makes a big choice at the end of the campaign, which I won't get into here, but it once again makes me wonder, what was the point of this? I was thinking 343 was going to try to make some sort of link from this moment to something Chief does later in the series. But no, it seems like this has absolutely no character impact on Chief at all. So what's left with this new character is basically just a 40-minute long character arc that is supposed to make you care deeply about them for no reason. It just does not work, and 343 failed at introducing a new memorable character. They didn't just fail at this once though, as they did it again with this bonus campaign's villain. The bonus campaign introduces Prophet Harmony, who is a new prophet of the Covenant that we've never seen before. I think this is actually a really great idea, as this could really bring some stakes and weight to the prequel missions here, as well as any more added in the future. Unfortunately, once again, this prophet is poorly written, sounding more like a bad MCU villain than anything else, and is extremely underutilized, showing up maybe like 3 to 4 times in the whole campaign. This new campaign just entirely fails story-wise. None of the new characters it introduces are interesting or well-written, and the existing ones are not fleshed out whatsoever. It doesn't even connect to CE at all, making it feel isolated from the game it's included with and inconsequential to the larger Halo storyline. All that's left is just a frankly poorly written and paced story that's more boring than anything. This is a bad story and a huge wasted opportunity for the franchise. The level design is no better, unfortunately. It's not nearly as bad as the story, however, I don't think it fits in with the rest of Campaign Evolved's level design. One of my favorite things about Campaign Evolved was how it was able to update CE's level design while still making it feel like it fit in within the rest of the game. The bonus campaign does not achieve this, however, as it kind of feels more like modern 343 level design than anything else, with just room after room of clearing enemies and being constantly interrupted with pressing a button or riding a grav beam or something like that. The entire campaign takes place on the same exact ship, so really nothing interesting happens throughout. It's literally just walking through similar looking hallways for 3 levels straight, which gets really boring and repetitive. This is surprising to me, as the main campaign works so hard to avoid this exact issue. To be fair though, the second level does have a really great idea, where it takes place in a simulated outdoor area on the ship, where the Covenant practice hunting humans. This could be a really great way to break up the pacing of walking through the ship, but in practice, all it is just like 10 to 15 minutes of walking through basic looking outdoor areas, and then you go right back into the ship. It's a great idea that just wasn't executed as good as it could have been. Another great idea is at the end of the third mission where you get to fly a Covenant ship out in space. Unfortunately, this is just the most basic ship combat mission ever, feeling exactly like how it does in Starfield, for example. You just fly around shooting the little circle in front of ships until they blow up, and do that again and again until all the enemy ships are gone. It's just, again, so boring and repetitive. Thankfully, this section really only lasts like 10 to 15 minutes, so it doesn't overstay its welcome, but again, it's another good idea that was poorly executed upon. The bonus campaign is also where the extended weapon sandbox comes in, and unfortunately, I think adding stuff like the battle rifle and brute plasma rifle does exactly what I feared it would. This bonus campaign just does not feel like Halo 1 because you are almost never using weapons that are actually from the original CE. Instead, you're mostly just using weapons from Halo 2, 3, or even Reach, and it just kind of loses what made CE feel so great to me personally. Thankfully, this is only an issue with the bonus campaign, but it does add to how out of place this game feels within the context of Campaign Evolved. On top of that, this campaign just does not fit within Campaign Evolved's difficulty curve whatsoever. Even if I were to have played it after the main campaign, this would still have been a major step up in difficulty. Brutes are added, which are not my favorite enemy in any Halo game as they just take so long to kill. So that, mixed in with the honestly poorly balanced levels, result in way too many deaths. It's not exactly hard, mind you, because Halo typically has you dying more often than you would in any other game, thanks to random grenades or melee or jank or something, but that's just really ramped up here in this bonus campaign. I just ended up getting frustrated, which is the worst thing to feel when I'm already bored from the poor pacing. I wouldn't really mind the increased difficulty though, if it wasn't for just how damn glitchy this game is. The most annoying glitch was one where I would just randomly die, which I later learned was that fully charged plasma pistol shots from dead enemies would automatically kill me, which really impacted the amount of times I died during my playthrough. My keybinds also got reset each time I launched the game, which was annoying. Finally, I got stuck in an infinite death loop thanks to a poorly timed checkpoint, which forced me to restart the second mission. I played the bonus campaign in the early access period, which was before a lot of these glitches got patched out, so this may not be an issue now, but it certainly impacted my experience. Halo Campaign Evolved is a double-edged sword. On one hand, it's a great evolution of the original Combat Evolved, bringing it into the modern day with modern cutscenes, gameplay, and level design. On the other hand, its bonus campaign is a regression, one that takes a step backwards in storytelling, level design, and gunplay. It's because of that bonus campaign and the step back that it takes that makes me think 343 learned absolutely nothing from remaking this game. It's clear that 343 can make a great game within the confines of an already established game, but not completely on their own. Campaign Evolved does not represent a bright future for the series because even while doing a great job at remaking Halo CE, they still can't even make a simple 3-mission mini-campaign. It's so clear to me that 343 is so utterly mismanaged because this bonus campaign just clearly suffers from signs of that. Uninspired level design, uneven difficulty, and a plot that is just absolutely by the numbers and unimpactful. It makes sense that 343 apparently has no other current Halo games even planned, because they just have no idea how to handle the franchise or even just where to go from here. Even the rumored campaign DLC, which is apparently the only idea they are even actively exploring, is something I just frankly don't want. If this bonus campaign is what we get from a high budget full game release, then I can't imagine how bad the lower budget DLC would be. The main campaign proves 343 can modernize an established foundation, but the bonus campaign gives me almost no confidence in their original storytelling or level design. I personally think the Halo franchise should continue with more remakes. While I don't think the other Halo games need a remake, I also didn't think CE did, and I was pleasantly surprised. I think more remakes will give 343 more time to figure out where they want to go with the series and get more fans on board. Remakes are always a great tool to get new players to play older games, and while I think MCC is sufficient enough for that already, I can't say I would mind if they remake Halo 2 next. So, do I recommend Campaign Evolved over the original game? Well, for most people, I think either would work. While this game does make a lot of great changes, I think it is only marginally better than the original, and they would both give you a pretty similar, if not both great, experience. But if you're someone who really cares about modern graphics, gameplay, and level design, then I certainly think you should give this game a try. Campaign Evolved is a great Halo game, even with the bad bonus campaign, and one that successfully convinced me that maybe Halo CE actually did need a remake. Hopefully it could also convince 343 to finally get their act together. I recommend Halo Campaign Evolved, 8 out of 10. Well y'all, that's my review of Halo Campaign Evolved. If you like this video, please make sure to like, comment, or even subscribe. Please also make sure to check out my TikTok at goodusername011. That's all I have for today, but I do want to take the last few moments to talk about me and my channel. Alright y'all, just want to say just a few things today. So the first thing is that I had an epiphany while I was writing this script. My videos aren't as good as I think they are. So I absolutely love to write, and I think my scripts are great, okay? I really do. I'm sorry, like, I bet they aren't, but I don't care. But I was like watching a YouTube video on like, you know, tips for new YouTubers and that stuff. And one thing I realized was that my intros are not good for YouTube. So like in my last video, my deltarune video, the first like almost a minute was just me saying like, in this video I'll talk about this, and quick note about spoilers. I can't do that for a full minute because people would click off after 30 seconds because I'm not saying anything. So that's why I changed my intro. I think I'm gonna be like tinkering with that for a bit. But yeah, like that's definitely something I need to think about, that like I don't just have to do a hook on TikTok and like the only hook I have to do here is just like the thumbnail. Like originally I'm like, oh, well, I'll just put chapters in the like description and like say what they are so people can click around if they want. People aren't going to do that, you know, so I need to hook them just a bit more. I really don't want to say like a hook like I do on TikTok, like this game sucks. Like I hate doing that. What I like to do on YouTube is really get descriptive and give context, and that's why my intros are like 4 minutes of me talking about myself. Also, I like to talk about myself, clearly. But yeah, like that's why I do that, and like I don't want to like stop doing that. I really want to do what I want to do and feel creatively fulfilled and not limited like I do on TikTok. But yeah, it's something I'll need to work on. Second thing is, oh yeah. So I'm recording this on Wednesday, which means my internship is not done yet. That's right, I actually was wrong in my last video, where I actually made another video during my internship. So I made a grand total of 3 videos during my internship. Yay! But yeah, no, that's really surprising to me because I only had like a week left or something and I was able to do it. So that's great. I made the right call playing this before Doom, I'll tell you what. But yeah, that's great for me because it's like I'm going to be working corporate for the rest of my life, most likely, right? And I was worried that I would only be able to make a video like once every month and a half, like with what happened with my James Bond video. But no, like I got this video out. This is a similar length to that, right? James Bond. I got this out in like what, a week and a half, 2 weeks? That's not that bad at all. I felt like I was making progress every day. So yeah, that really makes me feel a lot better about like working corporate and all that stuff. So yeah, I want to try to keep this short. So what's next? Well, Doom the Dark Ages. I'll probably start that probably not tomorrow. I actually kind of like played a few missions of like every other Halo game except CE and 3, and I'm gonna do 4 tomorrow just because I was in a Halo mood. I don't know. And I went back to 2, ODST and Reach, and I was like, wait, these games are actually really good. So yeah, like Saturday, oh, and I played Amnesia, Machine for Pigs. I love Victorian London, and like I was like, oh, this game looks so great. I played it before, but I replayed it. I was like, maybe I'll like it more now. No, okay? It literally crashed with like 30 minutes left of the game, and I was like, I'm just not gonna finish it. I don't care. I finished it before, but you know what I mean? Like, whatever, I'm not liking it. So yeah, like, Doom the Dark Ages next. I'll probably start that tomorrow, Friday, I don't know. But yeah, like I said, this is the last 2 days of my internship coming up, so, you know, I'll get that done. I'll have, like, some time to work on that. And then, of course, after that, Black Flag Remake, Crimson Desert, Bubsy, and then I have a Plague Tale coming out like late August, but I forgot the Mafia the Old Country DLC comes out August 14th, so I will be doing a video on that. So I bet that'll come before Crimson Desert, and to be honest, I haven't decided on if I'll do Black Flag first or not. We'll see what happens. But yeah, basically Doom the Dark Ages DLC next. So yeah, y'all, that's all I have to say. I'm gonna try to keep it shorter. I didn't really do a great job, but yeah, that's all I have to say for today, y'all. So thanks for watching, y'all, and I'll see y'all later.